on mute. Also, we will be having a Q&A session. If you do have a question, then type them into the chat function and the question function that will be on your panel, the GoToWebinar panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll be collecting those in the BITC office and then be sharing those out to our panelists. We'll do our best to get through all of your questions that you have, but if we don't, then we do record them so that we can go to our panelists afterwards to ask those specific questions. We have Laura Bengoa today, who's a terrific support to our team, who will be collecting all of those questions and answering any that you may have just to us within the office. So don't be shy, and please do participate in the chat function. So I think that's all I have in terms of housekeeping. We have a full packed agenda today. I'm going to kick off with a few facts and stats around global youth unemployment, just to give a bit of a context. But I'm delighted that we have Scott Robinson, who is the head of the Youth Careers Initiative at BITC, to speak about some of the further trends in youth unemployment and also some best practice that he's seen from across the globe. And they're going to be coupled very nicely by some comments on best practice from our brilliant partner, Community Business, who's a member of the CSR 360 Global Partner Network. Their Chief Executive, Vern Ngay, is going to be speaking about their Engage Hong Kong program, which brings together a lot of young people from very disadvantaged communities within the city, giving them work experience and mentoring. So we're delighted to hear from her. Then Scott is going to speak again specifically on the Youth Careers Initiative as a global initiative that works across many different countries, looking at how to give young people employment and long-term employment in the tourism industry. And we're going to finish off with the corporate perspective from Kate Gibson, who's the Vice President of Corporate Responsibility at the Intercontinental Hotels Group, presenting the IHG Academy. So three quite different initiatives, both in terms of scale and also in approach, that really hopefully gives a good rounded picture of what is going on in some of the best practices of youth unemployment today. So let's go to our next slide. Youth have always been more impacted by unemployment than adults have tended to be. When we talk about youth, it's the age range of between 15 and 24. It accounts for around 35% of unemployed people globally, despite representing just over 15% of the world's labour force and 21% of the global working age population. And as I say, unemployment for young people has always been an issue, but we did see an increase in the problem post-2008, so post the financial crash. An estimated 71 million young people are unemployed globally, which in 2016, I'm hearing that some people aren't necessarily able to hear us, which is a bit of a shame. I'm doing my best to try and work out why that might be the case. If you could let us know whether you can see our screen or not, that would be fab. I'm just going to continue as I'm doing, and we'll take it from there. So fingers crossed you can hear us. And we'll just keep going as we're doing. So 71 million young people are unemployed globally, which in 2016 meant that 13.56% of the unemployment rate for this group. The unemployment rate for young women has always been slightly higher, at 1% higher than men of the same. So I think we had a little bit of a technical issue to begin with on this webinar. I'm so sorry for those of you who are unable to hear us. We did a little bit of housekeeping to begin with, asking people to keep themselves on mute and also to put any questions they may have to our panel in the chat function and question function that you'll find on the right-hand side of the panel, the GoToWebinar panel. We have some terrific speakers today from YCI, Community Business Hong Kong, and also IHG, and I'm delighted that they'll be speaking about their particular initiatives. That was just a catch-up for anybody who didn't get the initial introduction, we've moved on to facts and figures for global youth unemployment. My name's Lydia Parnell. I'm the International Programme Manager for Community Investment here at BITC. I am not an expert in global youth unemployment, which is why I'm delighted we have some terrific panellists today, but I'm giving a bit of an overview on what global youth unemployment looks like. So, when we talk about young people, we're saying between people of 15 and 24 years old. They account for over 35% of unemployed people. There is an estimated 71 million young people unemployed around the world, which is 13.5 to 6% of unemployment rate for this group. Moving swiftly on, this is an issue that is affecting so many of our Sustainable Development Goals, and we'll be going through that very quickly just in a second. But it's also an issue that relies on so many goals to actually be achieved. In particular, the trends outlined from the ILO 2016 report, the World Unemployment and Social Outlook, said that the goals that relate specifically to poverty, so that's SDG 1, gender equality, SDG 5, decent work and inclusive growth, SDG 8, and reducing inequality, SDG 10. And we'll be going through that very, very quickly, obviously conscious of time. A high incidence of youth working poverty has direct negative implications for poverty alleviation, which is no surprise to us here who all work on this particular agenda. But it in turn suppresses growth potential, particularly for emerging and developing countries. And in developed countries, there are high levels of unemployment and disencouragement, which has long-term consequences for earning potential of youth, educational attainment, skills acquisition, and future opportunities, all of which then ultimately inhibit and jeopardize SDG 8, so decent work and economic growth. So it's all interlinked together, and this is why, as we are looking at such an issue that spans the SDG initiative, it's essential that we think about how interconnected all these problems are. And as I mentioned, it relies on so many others for it to actually be relieved. So things like SDG 4, quality education, and SDG 17, partnerships. Youth unemployment cannot be tackled with one charity or one business doing things in silos. So much of what we do as a mantra of BITC and of the CSR 360 Global Partner Network is to do things in partnership, and it is essential that we continue to do that for youth unemployment. Gender disparities in youth unemployment. For those of you who did hear me before, unemployment rates for young women are 1% higher than for men of the same age. And in 2016, there was a 16.6% gap in the labour force participation rate between young women and young men globally. So that gap is between the number of young people, and so young women who are employed, and the number of young women who are unemployed. And it's a higher gap for young women than it is for young men. These trends are even higher in Southern Asia, the Arab states, and Northern Africa. And the ILO attributed this mainly to social cultural factors. So gaining a higher level of educational attainment doesn't necessarily improve your chances of making a successful transition into the labour market. In these regions, rates of female tertiary enrolment exceed those of men, but this higher educational attainment has, at least to date, failed to translate into improved labour market attainment. Going on to our next, just conscious of time, it isn't just about gender disparities, but also saying reduced inequality as well, and that happens across different countries. So we are finding that those countries that have fewer opportunities for young people or lower academic attainment are increasingly, young people are increasingly willing to migrate. In emerging economies and developing countries, a 1% point increase in extreme working poverty raises the willingness to migrate by 0.54%. And similar correlations can be seen in extreme working poverty and youth unemployment occurring in developing countries. This brain drain has a massive effect on the economy as businesses can't find the talent that they need to sustain operations, reducing economic output, and again, opportunities for employment of young people down the line. So again, it's a downward cycle. Again, there are so many factors that are relying on each other and that can cause devastating effects and larger effects long term. Youth unemployment isn't just about unemployment itself. There's a massive issue for young people on underemployment. Now, what we mean by that is young people who have achieved a certain academic grade or have certain skills and attributes in an area who can't fully fulfill their potential because there simply aren't the jobs there, and they get further pushed down the jobs ladder. So that's a massive issue for people, and is an issue why people may actually decide to migrate. The other issue that young people are facing when there are fewer opportunities is taking jobs that are temporary work or lower and reduced working hours. And we'll go on very briefly onto what that means in terms of working poverty. But as it says here, as of 2015, more than 1/3 of youth in EU 28 were in temporary employment because they could not find a permanent role. And so it isn't just emerging markets, it's an issue that's facing so many of different countries and communities across the world. I mentioned slightly working poverty. 156 million young people are in working poverty today. So what we mean by working poverty is young people who are in work but are in moderate or extreme poverty across the globe. Moderate poverty is between getting 1.9 and 3.1 US dollars per capita per day, while extreme poverty is less than 1.9 US dollars per day. This varies across the globe, depending on where you are. You know, there can be as higher levels of young people working in poverty, reaching a staggering 70% in sub-Saharan Africa. But it is a problem, again, that's facing developing countries. There is a growing evidence of a shift in the age distribution of poverty, with youth taking the place of the elderly as the group at the highest risk of poverty. So I quickly went through all of those facts. Again, huge apologies for people who were not able to hear us very early on, but we will be sharing the recording afterwards, so I hope that you find what we've shared up till now interesting. I'm going to pass on to one of our in-house experts here, and that is Scott Robinson, who is the head of our YCI initiative. So let me just unmute Scott. There we are. You should be able to see now. There's a little bit of background noise there. I don't know now. I'm just going to pass over the slide to you now. So we should be able to see you.
Do you hear me okay there now?
We can hear you fine and clear, Scott. Sorry about the troubles that we had in the beginning, but please take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Laura. It's a pleasure to be with you all today for this webinar. My name is Scott Robinson. I'm head of the Youth Career Initiative, which is the hotel industry's global solution to youth unemployment. I've been with YCI for almost 3 years, but prior to that worked in the education sector and for a UK-based non-profit which worked internationally. So these are a few observations over my time and will no doubt speak to lots of the experiences many of you face in the countries that you're working in across the world. Oh, perfect. So the first to touch upon, which Lydia started upon, is during economic downturn there are fewer jobs at all levels. This has a negative effect on everyone. Higher skilled, high paid people lose their jobs and take jobs that are lower skilled and lower paid. This has an effect right down the chain, a kind of domino effect, which results in people taking jobs which they are overqualified for, but for the most disadvantaged and people living in poverty, this pushes them over a cliff edge. This creates a situation where they are unable to get work and either end up unemployed for a long period of time, or perhaps even end up unemployed for into their mid and late 20s. As the economy improves, those people that are in work will move up the chain into roles that relate to their skill level, but those pushed off the cliff edge will often struggle. Vulnerable people are at risk of being trafficked or could be forced into informal work. So I think this is one of the important things for us all to recognise in our planning of interventions in this space. For some, it's mindful too that the opportunity cost of education is simply too great. In situations where education and skill development are costly, they won't be able to pay, and worse still, where education is free, the opportunity cost of not working, even if that's to be a motorbike driver or a street vendor, could be the difference between a meal or going hungry. I think, again, mindful of the lives that many of the young people we're trying to support are living. Money offers people the ability to make the right decisions in the long term, and poverty forces people to make the right decisions today. When developing and implementing our solutions, it's important we keep these factors in mind. Here we go. So employers highlight gaps between the skills that young people are obtaining through education and the skills they need. Soft skills, communications and problem solving are in short supply, but hugely important as transferable employability skills of relevance regardless of the career an individual is pursuing. In many countries, the education system has failed to keep pace with technological advancements, with too great an emphasis placed on the acquisition of knowledge and competencies which can be assessed on an examination paper, to the detriment of the softer, less tangible skills which are now in high demand. So interventions which seek to address youth unemployment often fail as they aren't working with employers and they aren't responding to employer demand. Effective solutions need to be those which mobilise people and upskill them rapidly and place them into employment in short periods of time. They also need to be able to scale up and scale down according to demand. In a fast-paced world, the ability for your intervention to make people work ready and move into employment quickly is key. So I'm talking here about two examples of best practice that I've seen across the world, and Harambee the first, based in South Africa, where youth unemployment is around about the 50% mark off the top of my head. Lydia will maybe confirm after. If you can imagine a tall city block in Johannesburg with a queue of young people standing outside the door. As you walk through the door, there's a registration room with people filling in their forms, desperate to get into this organisation and learn more about what they do. As you enter through the buildings, you pass room upon room of people that are being assessed, either to understand their competencies, their strengths and weaknesses, or in other instances are participating in skill development relative to the strengths that have been identified through psychometric testing. Their performance is then published and they are put into teams, and in those teams they are working to build their skills and move into employment. Some of the detailed things that Harambee is doing is as simple as 5 minutes before a call to a young person, they get a text message, because many of the young people in South Africa simply won't answer their phone to an unknown number for fear of it being a debt collector or otherwise. I think the real strength of Harambee is its ability to work with business to place people into those roles and bridge the gap that they have in their skills in the shortest possible time period. I think they are looked upon in the youth unemployment space as a great example of good practice for many. A second to touch upon and scaling initiative is Generation, which is part of McKinsey, which is working across 5 countries to help 1 million young people move back into employment or into employment for the first time. This is targeting high growth industries where the opportunity for people to move into jobs is high. As you'll see there, 83% of graduates are moving into jobs within 90 days, and the retention rate in those jobs after 3 and 6 months, I believe, also remains strong. Happy to take any further questions at the end, but I'll hand back to Lydia at this stage to continue. Thank you, Lydia.
Thank you, Scott. I cannot thank you enough also for helping us to gain time on our webinar to make sure we can fit everything in. I did just check about the youth unemployment rate record in South Africa, and it said that in the second quarter of this year, it's now reached 55.9%, which is just absolutely outstanding, staggering figure. So thank you for sharing those thoughts, and also for sharing the 2 very different programs, one that is able to have, both of which making long-term impact on people's lives, both at a depth and also at a breadth. And we're really going to bring those 2 different points and to life now with a couple of different case studies from our networks across the globe. So our next speaker we have is going to come from Engage Hong Kong. She's actually the CEO of Community Business, to speak about Engage Hong Kong, which brings young people into work experience and mentoring, and has had significant impact within the city. And I'd love to hand over to Fern Ganay from Community Business. So let me just unmute you there, Fern. So we should be able to hear you loud and clear. Just bear with me.
Thank you.
We can, oh, there we go. We should be able to hear you now fine, Fern. And I'm just going to move over the slides to you. So you should be able to have full access. Fire away.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Good day, everyone. Let's see if we can move the slides.
Always. There we go. Perfect.
Okay. All right. Great. Yes. It's going to be a bit of a challenge to finish this in 10 minutes, but I will definitely try. Okay. So probably I've moved a bit too much there. Okay. So Community Business is a non-profit organization based in Hong Kong. We work across Asia with companies to help advance responsible, inclusive business practices. So Engage Hong Kong is one of our 2 flagship community programs. Most of the work we do is through our networks, through events, developing research, and so on. But we have 2 programs where we are actually working with people in the community. So Engage, we've been running for 10 years now. This is a high-impact 6-month program for disadvantaged secondary school students. So the aim of this program is to alleviate poverty by empowering students to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty. So these students have been selected through their schools and their social workers. Their families have been living in poverty for generations. So what we're trying to do with the students is work with them to lift their aspirations and help them plan for the future, including attending tertiary education. Okay, so just a couple slides here looking at the broader landscape in Hong Kong. So 18% of young people live in families below the Hong Kong's poverty line. So Hong Kong, despite being a very affluent city, has a huge wealth gap, one of the highest in the developed world. And amongst the population that are below the poverty line, only 14% attain post-secondary education. Okay, and then on the slide here you see the situation around youth unemployment in Hong Kong. So generally, unemployment is very low in Hong Kong. So you can see this is a couple years ago, but currently the figures are around the same, maybe 3 at most 4% at any time. But amongst young people, it is a lot higher. Okay, so the next slides go into Engage. We promote a multi-sector collaboration model. We work with the social services community and the business sector on this program. So there you see 3 of the NGOs that we have been working with for a number of years. So Community Business, we work with these disadvantaged secondary school students. They are between 14 to 19 years of age. They have limited exposure to social capital due to school, economic, and other reasons. Many of them are from single-parent families. Many of them are new immigrants from the mainland or other countries around Asia. Usually they're in families where both parents are working or single-parent families, so they do not have a lot of quality time with their parents, and they lack adult role models. So what we're doing here is really help them to build their self-esteem through a number of ways. So we provide corporate volunteers who act as role models or mentors. We provide a number of skills training workshops. They get direct exposure to the real workplace through company visits, and also 1 to 3 week summer work placements or internships. And we also try to build with them the sense of personal social responsibility by having them engage in community services. And so there are some of the stats from the last 10 years. And so each year we work with about 60, this year it was 66 students. So every year we do a survey. So from last year, the engaged students, mentees rated engaged 8.3 out of 10. So there, we try to assess the impact that the program is making on students. And then there's a whole host of training programs over the 6 months. Most of the training and activities are done in a very experiential way and are conducted on Saturdays, so that the students in Hong Kong tend to have quite a long school year with less than 2 months summer break. So it's really hard to fit the program in just on Saturdays. Okay, and then in terms of the long-term impact on the mentees, so here we are measuring whether or not they're able to achieve post-secondary school education. So just based on the survey that we ran last year, where we reached out to many of the alumni, we found that 54% of the graduates that we were able to reach either attained already or were in the process of undergoing higher education qualification. So whether that is, it's mainly degree programs, but they also could be associate degree programs. And that compares to 40% of Hong Kong's young people. So that's young people across the board. And we are dealing with a population that are from poor backgrounds. So it does show that there is positive impact from the program. And in terms of, so this last slide, some of the top tips. So over the 10 years, we've learned a lot. Every year we do reflect on how the program can be improved. We talk to the students, we talk to the mentors, and everyone else that's involved in the program. And Hong Kong's education system is it's pretty stressful, to say the least. It's very intense. So the students, they're stressed out already. And so what we try to do is integrate the program and help them to improve their lives and not add more stress to their already stressful academic lives. So for the students, we're constantly working with the social workers to initially identify the students, and throughout the year, we make sure that the students, we understand their expectations and vice versa, and we do a lot of work to make sure that they do attend all of the activities. Sometimes I feel we're working against the schools, although the schools, at the outset, they agree and they're very supportive of the students attending and getting involved in the Engage program. Sometimes there are school activities that happen that are ad hoc and not planned, and so sometimes the students aren't able to attend. And so we really try to work with the 60 students and focus on making impact with each and every one of them. And the mentors and trainers, we do quite a lot to train the mentors and to ensure that we create a community of them so that they're learning from each other. And we have a huge group of trainers over the years that develop very interesting and experiential, engaging sessions for the students. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope I didn't go over the 10 minutes too much.
No, not at all, Fern. Thank you so much for sharing what is an absolutely terrific program that has impacted so many young people so deeply within Hong Kong over the last 10 years. And I think what is so important to highlight is the importance of supporting young people, particularly from very disadvantaged communities when you're looking at youth unemployment. Going back to Scott's point earlier about how young people who are from disadvantaged backgrounds will be those who are often the most affected as a kind of dominoes effect by unemployment rates generally. And also your point about having your young people being given softer skills and skills that will get them employed and giving them that confidence to go on to higher education and really attaining what levels of qualifications they really could do to fulfill their potential. So thank you so much for sharing Engage Hong Kong, and I look forward to some of the questions that we've already got through and your answers to those in the Q&A session.
Sure, thank you.
Moving on, thank you very much. Moving on, we have Scott Robinson back again to speak specifically. I'm just going to go through Fern's lovely slides here. As I say, the recording will be available after this webinar, so you will be able to see those contact information from Community Business if needed, and we'll be sharing links to things there. But I'm going to unmute Scott for the second time, hopefully just as smoothly as we did before. Not so smoothly. Scott, are you self-muted there? Would you mind unmuting yourself? I think we might be okay. Hello, Scott, can you hear us? No, we've got a few problems there with him. We'll give him a... maybe we can hear you now. Hello!
Can you hear me now?
You're like, you're a bit close to us.
It wasn't coming off mute for some reason. Maybe it's a sign that maybe it's a sign that 2 times in one webinar is more than enough for anyone, but let's see. Lovely to be back with you again. I'll not introduce myself. I will caveat the next section by just saying that everything I said before about good practice and doing it right is all easier said than done, and I think you will see some of that at our side, but lots of this I think is about a learning journey and how do we improve our initiatives and improve our interventions to be stronger in the process. Without further ado, I will start clicking through the slides, which isn't working there for me, perhaps.
Working. Is it working now? No. Shall we just? Do you just want to tell me next slide, Scott, and then we'll do it that way?
Lovely, Lydia. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Next slide, if that's okay.
That's working.
And the next one.
And the next one.
Wonderful. So the hotel industry faces challenges in attracting and retaining entry-level talent. Kate Gibson is with us, and I will let Kate share some of the statistics on that soon. However, with the hotel industry growing, particularly in emerging markets, the Youth Career Initiative continues to offer an incredible opportunity to transform the lives of some of the most disadvantaged young people in our societies. Next slide, Lydia. The programme started out as an initiative between One Hotel and UNICEF back in 1995. At that time, large numbers of young women, particularly from the north of Thailand, were being trafficked into the sex industry, and the lack of clear prospects left them vulnerable. The hotel and UNICEF decided to offer a programme of training in which managers would become teachers and hotel associates would become mentors. Based out of Bangkok, the programme was a huge success, and it's from this small initiative that we trace our roots back. Next slide, Lydia. So the programme sees between 8 and 20 young people trained for a period of 3 to 6 months in a full-service international hotel. The young people benefit from classroom training in English, communication, problem solving, and in building their self-confidence, all while learning practical skills across a range of hotel departments. In the process, learning what are their strengths and what might be a possible future career for them. Next slide, Lydia. The programme relies on collaboration between major international hotel companies, who in normal business are competitors, non-profit organisations, who have the connection and trust of the young people in the communities we seek to serve, and ourselves as YCI, where we bring tools, resources and support in facilitating and brokering partnerships. Next slide, Lydia. In 2016, the World Travel and Tourism Council awarded the programme the Tourism for Tomorrow Award in the People category. This followed a thorough assessment process which involved assessors visiting YCI in Brazil and in India, to make sure that the award was justified. So we're very proud of that, and the 2017 award has since gone on to a similar initiative in China, the China Hotel Education Initiative. Next slide, Lydia. Super. You'll see that the companies we work with includes IHG, Kate will be speaking next, and a range of other companies, which range from 3 companies in the instance of Soniva through to 5,700 in the case of Marriott. Next slide. In addition, we also work with non-profit partners who range from small organisations focused on anti-trafficking initiatives through to global international organisations including SOS Children's Villages, World Vision and Plan International. That scale and that breadth of partnerships we find works really well, with each partner bringing respective and complementary strengths along the way. Next slide. So we're currently active in 18 countries, 31 locations across the world, and to date 4,000 young people have graduated from YCI. In the coming 12 months, we have plans for a further 20 locations and 11 new countries to join the pipeline. In addition, we're also open to partnership opportunities outside of those where they exist. Next slide. So the results of YCI really do speak for themselves. 75% of all graduates move into jobs within 1 month of graduating. A further 10% move into employment. Hotels, non-profit partners both report how YCI helps them to achieve both business and social objectives too. Next slide. I think that probably is it for us. For anybody on the webinar that would be interested in finding out more about YCI, or possibly seeing if there is an opportunity to launch the programme in your region, then please do reach out to us. The relevant regional partnerships managers you can see there with their contact details. In addition, we are also currently in the process of recruiting for a partnerships manager based in East Asia and Southeast Asia. So if you have any networks that you could share that to, all the information on that can be found on our website. I'll hold off now for questions, but for now, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Scott, and it's always nice to hear your voice again, so thank you for coming on for that second time. I'm amazed that 75% of graduates secure employment within a month. That's absolutely phenomenal, and it shows just the strength of the programme and the partnerships that you have. Anybody who has questions for Fern or Scott, there's still time. Please do type them in the chat function within your panel on the right-hand side. We are collating those and we'll be sharing those at the end. And we're actually running on time, which is fantastic, if not early. So I'm going to move quickly over to Kate Gibson. I knew I was going to jinx it somewhere, this amount of luck. Kate Gibson, who's the Vice President of Corporate Responsibility and International Continental Hotels Group. Kate, I'm just going to unmute you now. Bear with me. So, Kate, we should hear you loud and clear.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine, Kate. Now, I'm going to do your slides for you. So, whenever you're ready, do make a start.
Great. Okay, well, thanks very much, everybody, for joining the webinar. And it's obviously a really relevant topic. And, you know, it's great to hear lots of different examples about how different industries are approaching it. So, Scott already provided a little bit of background in terms of YCI. What I wanted to do is tell you a little bit about IHG's overall approach and a little bit more about the travel and tourism industry in terms of being part of the solution to this growing and really important issue that needs to be addressed. So I work for Intercontinental Hotels Group, or IHG as we're known. We are one of the larger hotel companies. We are the only British flagged of the international hotel companies, and we have just shy of 5,200 hotels in 100 countries and territories. So in terms of the range of different players, for example, partnering with YCI, we're on the larger end and on the scale end, and that's important for us, and I'll tell you why in a second. I think the other thing that's important to note with regards to IHG, and this is true of many of the international hotel chains, is that we deploy an asset-light business model. which means that we only own and fully control a very small minority of the hotels in our portfolio. So we only own 8 hotels, and the vast majority of our hotels under our brands are franchise, which means that we don't own the building and we don't employ the staff, which means that youth unemployment and us being part of the solution is very important to us, and we approach it in a particular way, which I'll come on to in a second. Scott already touched on this, but in terms of youth unemployment and why this is important and why it begs attention from the travel and tourism industry is twofold. Because the first thing is travel and tourism is one of the world's economic engines and one of the largest sectors, supporting 292 million jobs globally and 10.2% of global GDP. I think it's something that is perhaps there's not as much awareness, I think, of the role that travel and tourism plays in terms of employment as perhaps other sectors, but it's a big one. And that's the reason why, for example, the UN World Travel Organization, or the UNWTO, is designated 2017 the International Year of Sustainable Development through Tourism. So it's recognizing the importance of the industry, but also I think it's recognizing the fact that travel and tourism creates jobs that are accessible. You don't need a particular skill or qualification to come into a role in hospitality, particularly more of the frontline roles. And it is an industry also where there is the potential to work your way up, to start in a frontline role and move your way up in a relatively short time span. We're not the only industry that offers that opportunity, but we are one of a shrinking number of industries. And I think the third aspect of why there's real potential to be part of the solution for youth unemployment is obviously these jobs are local. So unlike many global industries that perhaps produce something in a small number of locations and sell it all around the world, travel and tourism is obviously intimately linked to the local community. And then I guess finally, the vast majority of individuals working in the sector are young people, as Scott mentioned. So it's very relevant. In the UK, in terms of an economic driver, it's the 4th largest industry, employing just shy of 4.5 million people, and that is definitely something that is really suffers from very low awareness in the UK context. People don't realize just what a big sector it is, and also just how dispersed those jobs are across the country, and obviously very high growth as well. In terms of why solving youth unemployment is important for IHG, I guess it's twofold, and Scott did touch on this. Obviously, the hotel industry and the major chains, as well as small individual hotels, need to find good people. We need to find people who are engaged and energized and are excited to be in the roles that they are, and who will deliver excellent service to guests. We know that guests are increasingly discerning. Information on hotel stays is increasingly obvious in the social media sphere and in every which way you can imagine it. And actually, it's one of the few sustainable competitive advantages in our industry. If you think about, if you want to copy a hotel room, you can just go and stay in a hotel room and see what kind of bells and whistles your competitors may have in their room. But finding a way to create a culture where people are engaged and excited is something that all the hotel chains are trying to do. And young people, given the propensity of people to want to come into the industry, is a really important part of that. And obviously our hotels are in local communities all around the world, and we want to make sure that we make a positive difference on those communities. So there's a real win-win in terms of the hotel industry. Obviously, in the UK context, if you think about the need to recruit more people, particularly in the context of Brexit, that is something that's already starting to be spoken about much more, and it is something that we're certainly very, very aware of and very focused on. And obviously, we know in the 100 countries and territories where we operate, the need to find great people and also the need to really make a difference in the community is very clear across all the territories that we're in. I think in terms of the challenges on this, I guess one thing is obviously roles in hospitality. There is a bit of an image problem in travel and tourism. I think there is a bit of a sense of, it's not perhaps the most coveted career path for many people. So I think there is a need to raise awareness about just some of the opportunities that are out there in terms of travel and tourism, and particularly the ability to start where you start and to really move up and work your way up. Go on to the next slide. So in terms of our solution for youth unemployment, our approach as a global company and as a franchise business is to focus on the areas where we can make the biggest difference as a hospitality company, and to focus on areas where there's a real win-win for local communities and for our owners. And again, as I mentioned, the vast majority of the hotels under our brands are owned and operated by third-party owners, and we work with them very closely to help ensure that their businesses are a success, because obviously their success and our success are intimately linked. But we do also try and do things at scale where we can, and that's why we developed the IHG Academy. So we have a global work experience programs, and it allows thousands of people to get experience of the industry, to get on-property experience, to build their skills and to improve their chances of finding employment in the sector, and in many cases of being employed by IHG. It's a very simple model. Our hotels partner with local education providers or community groups, and in many cases the vast majority of people who are doing this are young people. They undertake work experience placements. The program is deliberately designed to be flexible so that we can achieve a great deal of scale. And to give you a sense, last year we had just shy of 12,000 individuals do work experience across our global estate. And we've had more than 35,000 since 2013. So again, it is flexible, so work experience placements vary in duration depending upon what the individual is looking for, what kind of role they want to get experience in, and what kind of hotel it is. It might be a large intercontinental hotel in a city center, or it might be a very small Holiday Inn Express, for example, outside of a town, if you will. So the needs on both sides tend to be quite different. Our hotels have tools and resources on a website that we've developed, and that helps our hotels to be empowered and to go out into their communities and set up relationships. As I mentioned, in terms of scale, over 40,000 individuals have benefited from this. And just linking back to what Scott was talking about, one of the programs that we work through as part of the IHG Academy is YCI. And we also have other partnerships. For example, in the United States, we work with Goodwill Industries, which is a social enterprise that helps people from all walks of life build skills and confidence and get into jobs. And we run multiple programs with them where their beneficiaries are doing work experience in our hotels, and in many cases moving into jobs. We work with the Princess Trust, for example, as well in the UK, and many other partners all around the world. In terms of what's next for us, obviously continue to grow the program and ensure it has an even more positive impact on ourselves, our owners, and local communities as well, and really to be part of the solution to the youth unemployment issue, which is both an issue and we see it very much as an opportunity to make a difference. So I'll stop there, make sure we have enough time for questions. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Kate, and particularly for your points around why you feel it's important for IHG to be involved in youth unemployment and the particular role you can create, but how flexible the IHG Academy is. It was a great counter to the points that we've made, and really kind of brings to life some of the other points that we've tried to share within the webinar. So we do have time for some Q&A, and we do have some lovely questions from people from across the from the audience today. The first one we're going to is actually for Fern in community business. So let me just unmute all of our panelists to make sure that we can all speak at the same time. So Fern, this is specifically for you. Mentoring is a big part of your Engage Hong Kong program, and one of the questions that we had was around what kind of criteria do you have for the mentors who take part within your particular initiative?
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for the program. One thing that I neglected to mention about our program, it is an English program, so all the sessions are conducted in English. Now, most of the students that come through the program, I would say the majority are not comfortable speaking in English. So we feel that being able to get a much better grasp of English, conversational English, but just being comfortable speaking English will open doors for these young people. So, and that's actually worked quite well. We see these kids at the beginning probably quite apprehensive about speaking in English, and then by the end of like the 6 months, many of them are quite comfortable, at least speaking to their mentors. So in terms of the characteristics or the criteria for selecting mentors, you know, we take mentors who are fairly young, so people that have been working for a few years all the way to senior people. They do need to have good English skills and from all different industries, and so we do put them through training. So some of the people, you know, if they're passionate about working with young people, teenagers, and they want to, you know, they're really committed to helping alleviate poverty, we more or less take them, because we actually find it difficult to recruit. What we try to do is match the number of mentees to mentors. So assuming we have 60, this year we had around 54 mentors for 66 mentees. So we had mentoring circles. We put people together in maybe circles of 3 mentors and maybe 4 students, so that everybody has some support. Sometimes our mentors are not able to attend every session. We ask for a commitment of, it's around 60-something hours over the 6 months, and with most of the activities on the weekends. So if they have a lot of travel, then it probably won't work. So, but having this kind of system of mentoring circles has really helped, because at least you know, the kids get an opportunity to work with more than one mentor. They're assigned one key mentor, but then they have the opportunity to work with others, and they back each other up, so it seems to work quite well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Fern. I really do appreciate your input there. We now have a question, a similar one, but from the opposite side, I suppose, from for Kate, and that's around, you've spoken about how you work with brilliant partners like YCI and also the Prince's Trust. When hotels are looking to partner locally with educational groups or community groups, what sort of criteria do they look for within partners? Is there something that IHG Academy recommends for their hotels about who to work with?
That's a great question, and it's something that we've, I guess, grappled with over the years, because we're operating in 100 countries and territories. What we provide to our hotels to make sure that they're empowered is guidance on how to set up their IHG Academy program and the things to look for. And it tends to be around asking the hotel to be clear on the types of roles where they're interested in trying to fill gaps, because obviously the type of partner you're looking for, if you're looking to find a future general manager from a hotel, is very different than if you're looking to find someone who might be serving breakfast in the restaurant. So we first of all advise them to really think about where their talent gaps are, where they think they can make a difference, and then to look in particular in their local areas. On ihgacademy.com as well, we have added a geolocator. So it means that you can key in where your hotel is located, and it will tell you if there are other IHG Academy programs already running in your local area. And it'll also tell you about potential partners. So it's something we put in place last year to try and help our hotels be even more targeted, I guess, and to find that win-win.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Kate. I know that our audience will really appreciate that. We do have time for one more question, and I'm going to direct this to Scott. I'm sorry that if this potentially is one of the most challenging, but Scott, from everything that you've seen and the different approaches that you've heard today, and also the experience that you've brought, where do you see the trend of youth employment and unemployment going? You know, with the world changing so much in its economy, with digital being a massive opportunity but potential threat to employment, what do you think is the general trend for youth unemployment over the next few years?
Wow, Lydia, such a big question. If I had my golden ball with me, I would do my very best to answer. I'm not a futurist, sadly, so I will try my best. I think that the movement towards independent working and gig economy that we're seeing, I only anticipate to continue, and I anticipate that more young people, particularly in those lower paid, lower skilled jobs, will be moving into that form of work. I think that digital will indeed make some jobs redundant, but as we've seen in previous industrial revolutions in the past, it does create new ones at the same time. I think that the need for quality and excellent service, and if you look at the millennial mindset and the valuing of the experience in that process and having incredible experiences, will mean that those experiences are often things that can only be delivered by individuals, and a need for those to be incredibly localized and personalized experiences will mean that the roles that we play will be different, but they will be more local, different in nature. But in terms of what that means for youth and employment, I really don't know at this stage.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I did put you on the spot there slightly, Scott, and I think that was a terrific answer. It does seem that with so much of what we're seeing at the moment, the economy and jobs are massively changing, or they continue to change. Your reference on the gig economy as well being of a particular reference. So thank you so much, Scott, for those questions and answers, and also to the rest of our panellists, generally for your answers, lovely answers to Q&A, but also for taking the time to prepare such brilliant presentations and speak up so brilliantly. So thank you so much, Fern, Kate and Scott. Thank you also to all of our audience, be you from a CSR 360 Global Partner Network member, a BITC member, or a partner, a corporate partner, an NGO of our wider networks. We really appreciate you dialing in. Thank you as well for sharing your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get through all of them today, but we have recorded them and we'll pass them on to our panelists so that they can feed back and we can get back in touch with you. We will make the recording available as well. If you want any more information about some of the things that we were looking at today, then you can find them on their website. We will include these in our follow-up emails that we send to you, but you do have the websites up there again. Just a personal thank you from me to Laura Bengoa, who's a member of our team in the international team. She's been terrific in terms of sorting out any technical issues we had in the beginning. Sorry for anybody who experienced those, but also generally making sure that the event went well today. So thanks to our speakers, thanks to the audience, thank you to Laura, and thank you so much everybody for listening. Goodbye.